Today, I'd like to come right alongside you to teach you a high-end logo removal workflow for the studio version of DaVinci Resolve 19. You're going to learn how to convert raw footage plates to linear ACES CG EXR sequences for compositing back in Fusion, and how to even work with image sequences in Resolve to begin with. We've done a perfect round trip, not adjusting anything else. You'll learn where to download and install the OCIO view LUT so you can properly view your ACES CG in Fusion, the round trip Affinity Photo ACES workflow so you can non-destructively paint a clean plate, how to use the built-in planar tracker for match moving the cleaned up patch, how to match the grain by using a Denoised plate and a free plugin you can get from Fusion Reactor, and finally, how do we render this comp out? What are the best pro settings so that it'll play back on just about any timeline? Hey, if you decide that you want to follow along with me, I have provided the raw footage available to download at creativevideotips.com by joining the Cutting Club. And I would just want to say thank you so much to those of you that have already joined. So the task is to remove this logo off of the backpack. Now, it doesn't look like this is going to be a super difficult one. The light doesn't change a lot. There's not a ton of movement in it, but I just want to show you the workflow that's involved converting this to ACES CG so it can be used in Affinity Photo, brought back in Fusion, or used in any other app. Now, anytime I'm working on a VFX shot, the first thing I want to take a look at is the name of the shot, the name of the clip. And in Resolve, if you select the clip and go up here to the inspector and the file tab, you can see this is Blackmagic Raw. We want to change the name of this because we might have multiple shots from the same original clip. So if you click on this name down here, we'll change this to SHO10 underscore because it'll be like shot 1. I always start with 10 or work in increments of 10. And then the end of it might be called, instead of BRAW underscore L1. And if I click, you'll see that it's changed down here. And this can be used as a clip name token is what it's called on the deliver page. The first thing we'll do is make the conversion to ACES from Blackmagic Raw. We'll do that on the color page. And the color page has this handy ACES transform. You just click and drag it onto a node. We're going to use ACES 1.3. And the input transform is the important thing to know about the import transform is what shot the thing, right? So if you can figure out what camera shot the footage, you just enter that right here. So this was a Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 4K. So I'll choose Blackmagic Film Gen 5, and the output is going to be ACES CG. So I just need to find this in the list. And once you do this once, you can save this so you can reuse these later on. Gamut compression will be reference gamut compress, and you'll see if you're unfamiliar with working with linear, which is what you should be using for compositing, it makes the image dark. That's okay. We're not actually losing any detail here in these dark shadow regions. We're retaining all of that, especially when we use a format like EXRs. So when we come to the deliver page to render this ACES shot out, what we want to take a look at up here at the top level, the video section, it's set to single clip usually by default. And what that means is it'll take your entire timeline from beginning to end and make it into one single clip. But we don't want it to be one single clip. We want to use individual clips because we could actually have a timeline that's set up where we export a bunch of these in a row. So it could be like shot 1, shot 2, shot 3, and each of these can get their own independent source resolution and time code so that they relink throughout the whole post-production process. Now choose custom export up here, and we're going to build our own custom export that you can save and reuse later on. You can also download this in the Cutting Club download files for this project. So under format, we're not going to be using QuickTime. We're going to be choosing EXR because this will work in floating point. So choose EXR, and the codec, we don't want to choose RGB half. Instead, what we want to be choosing is, or what I like to choose is RGB half DWAB. Now DWAB is DreamWorks Animation Codec. The default compression level is 45 is good. And this is going to save you a lot of extra file space over the default in here. RLE is another popular one. Zip is another one. But this gets the files down to something that's more like ProRes 4444. And it's great for pretty much anything that I work on. We're going to, next down here, we're going to choose, we've got individual clips. We're going to choose render at source resolution. That's important, but that's not all, okay? When you choose render at source resolution, you also need to really pay attention under the advanced settings down here to a couple of their things, and that's down here in this section. And the important one I want to point out is disable sizing and blanking output, because anytime you do conforms, you usually have some sort of sizing information that's from the inspector, the zoom, position stuff, if you don't zero these out beforehand, which you don't need to, or if you have blanking, right? So timeline blanking, which is like letterboxing top and bottom, it bakes that in even though you may have chosen render at source resolution. So in my mind, anytime you use render at source resolution, you pretty much always also want to have this box, which is not checked by default for disable sizing and blanking output. The others here, force the Bayer to highest quality. That's kind of obvious. Just make sure you get this best quality out of the image. And enable flat pass, I have that turned off. Basically, it just says, hey, we are going to take the ACES transform from the color page, anything you did there. And then below that, we have frame handles. So what a frame handle is it's basically, it's extra frames. So the extra frames allow for re-editing later on. And what that would mean if we turn this up to 10, which is my suggested default, it's a VFX standard, is 10 frames on this side of the shot, 10 frames on that side of the shot, so it can easily be re-edited later on. And in fact, for VFX, it's important to render with handles because a lot of times you have motion blur that you're incorporating, and you need that to be already active on the first frame of when you're working. Now we can skip the audio tab because this is going to be a folder full of pictures, but on the file tab, we have something different that you might not have used before, and that's tokens. Tokens are basically metadata that can be driven from anything else within Resolve, but the one we're interested in is what is called clip name. So the file name currently is set to custom name, which is good. By the way, if you did dailies, that's when you would choose source name. We're doing individual VFX shots. We're using custom name, and the custom name is going to be the clip name. So just select the custom name field there, type percentage, so that's Shift 5, clip space name, return. And what that clip name refers to is on the edit page, whatever is on the edit page, this name down here. So we call this shot 10, which is shot 1, layer 1, which again we assign from the file area over here. It will take this name and assign it to the file name on disk on render. So on the deliver page, a couple other short things here that I like to do. I like 3 digits in my file name because I don't work with shots longer that would need that. And then the other thing is the render clip starts at 0. That's just a Fusion thing. All Fusion comps start at 0 when they're in Resolve Fusion, so that just makes things easier. And now because this is an image sequence, all the images it makes need to go into a specific folder. So when we take our look at our location here, when we're building these out, we want to choose Browse, just pick a single shot folder. I'm going to put all my plates for this shot in this Backpack Affinity folder. And if I just put it all in there, they would just go directly in there. But we can go a little bit further by getting an automatically generated folder based off the clip token, right? So what I'll do is go to the end of that string there, hit the slash key, and then again, %, clip name. And by doing it like this, you see that it's at the end of the location where I want to go, it will automatically draw out the folder name that matches the clip name that's inside of it. Super, super cool technique. Now that this is all set up, we've got all our settings are good to go. There's the video settings, or there was the file settings. Here are the video settings. We can go over here to say the 3-dot menu, say save as new preset, and we'll call this EXR demo. And if we're happy with that, we've got a demo. We can use this again and again, add to render queue, render all. And if I take a look at that folder on my hard drive, let's go to here, we'll go to Fusion Fridays, Backpack Affinity. It automatically created a folder, and it's writing out all those EXR sequences in there, 56 items, Command I. They're about 6 megabytes a piece, not too bad. And that's much smaller than they'd be if we had chosen the defaults of zip or RLE compression. So now that is our main plate, but the thing is this plate here actually has a lot of noise in it. So the other plate that is a very common thing to do for VFX is to create a denoised plate. So here's how I would do that. I'm going to hold Option and Shift on the clip that's on the timeline. This just makes a straight up copy. And this one I'm going to rename over here. Instead of L1, I'm going to underscore DN for denoise. And then because I just want to render and work on this one plate that I'm getting ready to send out, I'm going to turn that off with D. go to the color page, we're going to use, this is where Resolve Studio really comes in here in version 19, is we're going to be using the noise reduction that's built in, and that's not in the free version. It's actually the reason I first bought Resolve many years ago, was because of this noise reduction. So if you're over here in any of these other tabs, it's this guy right here. That gets you to noise reduction. And we need to add 2 serial nodes, one for the noise reduction and one more, Option S, so we can actually really see what the noise reduction is doing, because it's really hard to see anything in linear when we're looking over here. So this other one, what I'm going to do is actually just drag another ACES transform on here and say we're going to go this time from ACES CG. And again, I would save these so that you can just paste them on later from a power bin. But this is ACES CG to Rec 709, which would be typically at the end of your pipeline. And this is just so that we can kind of sandwich, this is an ACES sandwich on both sides, so we can do our noise reduction in the middle and still sort of see, you can see that grain. We're going to try to get rid of that with some noise reduction. So with number 2 selected right in the middle, I'm going to go down here to temporal noise reduction, maybe change this to like 3 frames. Now temporal is basically using the frames left and right to try to clean up and get rid of that noise, and it doesn't do anything until you turn it up, but it doesn't need much because the ISO was like 200, this is outside, so that was probably about enough actually, just maybe 4. Now the way you can kind of see how much noise reduction you're doing is if you click on this highlight window, and then there's some, if it's on these other buttons, choose the AB one, and you can kind of see how much you're removing. If it's too much, you can see start getting all that detail. That means you're actually losing too much detail. So that's obviously that would be way too much. So I'm going to turn this off just so I can zoom into the part that I really care about when we're going to be sampling the noise, which is going to be this region over here. I'll hit the AB window again, and we'll start to turn this up until we start to see something happen. Let's just call it 4. On YouTube, it might be hard to see how much noise is being removed, but the idea is we remove the noise so that when you do paint cleanup, there's not static frozen noise on the still frame. All right, so I think we got enough of the noise removed so that we'll be able to do paint cleanup good and not be staring at frozen noise. But we do want to disable this, we don't need this node here. We don't want to take this back to 709, so delete that. That was just so I could see with my own eyeballs here. And to render out the denoise plate, because we can rename this on the timeline under the file inspector area, call this DN at the end, go to the deliver page. It's going to take the token clip name, so we don't really have to change anything else. It's in fact going to dump this right into the folder for that shot. We'll hit add to render queue, start to render, and the denoise plate gets dumped out and a folder is created automatically for it right there. And we can take a look at the file size differences if you're curious. Command I, and the denoised one is a little bit smaller, which makes sense. There's not as much detail. Hey, real quick, in case you're wondering why should I even use ACES CG to begin with? Well, 1, it's open source, so it works across a lot of apps. And then 2, it gives you like a standard in case you have a shoot that uses lots of different camera formats to sort of unify everything so that you can have predictable results every time. And it maintains all the dynamic range of the original camera footage as well. So there's so many benefits. Once you get your head around this, I think it's going to really change your workflow. To get these back into Resolve to start compositing, there's a little trick that I like to do, and that's in the media pool is first create a bin for your plates, just have it open, and you can just drag folders straight to a timeline from the Finder, in case you didn't know that. So it's kind of a neat little hack, instead of having to do this whole special import process. So I would just take the L1 sequence of shots here, just grab the folder straight down to a timeline, and you could do that with the denoise plate as well. And those are imported. And you can see over here the image sequences are loaded. In fact, if you turn on your timecode, which is right over here, show timecode overlays, the sequences retain full timecode. So these will work with any sort of VFX round-trip workflow. If this is all you get from this whole tutorial, now you know how to make ACES CG plates for someone that's working in Nuke or Flame or something else. And they have all the handles available to work on them. So we've got both our denoise plate and our main plate that are down here on the timeline. Let's get into Fusion and take a look at these. We don't actually need the denoise plate. We're just going to work on the one below it. So if you just turn it off and then you click Fusion, it'll take whatever the highest one that's visible. So click Fusion, and the image is still dark. And the reason why is this image is linear, and we need to have a view LUT that converts it for us to look normal. And if you click this button right up here, this is your view LUTs button, and you want to choose the OCIO display view LUT, click edit, and then basically what this is asking for is a specific file on your hard drive. You need to go get this from the internet. And I was always wondering, how the heck do I know which one to pick? I'm going to walk you through that right now. So the link will be down in the description on how to get to this website right here. This is the Open Color IO Config ACES page. And all you need to do on here, navigate to the Releases tab over here on the right. Okay. Click on Releases, and that'll bring you to all the versions that are out there. And if you scroll down, the one I actually want to use is not the most current one because it's not supported in Affinity Photo, at least as of now. This is getting into the fall of 2024. The one you want to choose, the current one, is this right here, which is 2.3. We want to actually be using the 2.2 version of Studio, so that'll have all the camera configs in it. So just click that, and as soon as you do, it loads it into your Downloads folder. And it's just this tiny 69 kilobyte file. And all you need to do is place this in a location on your computer that is easy to be referenced by Fusion and Affinity so that it can apply a viewing LUT for you, right? This little tiny file is all you need. You don't need a big bucket of LUTs or anything like that. So I'll just take that, Command-C, I'll place it in my Resolve ACES folder, which is where I like to keep my config file. And then on the viewer over here, you can see I have a config file location. You say browse, and you point it to the location of that config, that OCIO file. And then you're going to be changing a couple things here. The source space is going to be ACES CG. Now this is saying what kind of footage are you loading to me? We made ACES CG files. And what is your display? So what are you looking at on the computer monitor? I'm looking at the sRGB display, and it does the transform, all that for you. You don't really need to touch the rest of that, but it does have these cool gain sliders here so you can really match levels. So you can see if I bring this up, we haven't lost any data there in those dark areas. I know you were probably concerned, hey, we totally crushed the image. No, all of that detail that was existing before is still there. The other thing to know here is you can save this as a default in a couple ways. So one of them is if you right click on the name, you can say Settings, Save Default, so that next time you come into Fusion, that'll be your default. And the other thing too is about this whole viewer being set as a default as well. So if you right click anywhere in this area, you can go to Settings, Save Defaults. And I like to do this with this three-dot menu here with a couple options that are not the default. So smooth resize, I like that turned off. What that means is when I zoom in really close on a pixel or something, I can see the pixel. You can see that there. If you turn this to being on, it just makes it a blurry mess, and it makes it kind of hard to do detail work that I like to do. So I'll leave that off. And the other one I like to leave off is the checker underlay. So that means if I have any sort of cutouts of transparency, it goes black underneath instead of doing that checkerboard that some people like. It's just harder to see detail work when that's on. So the way you get that so it loads every time is, again, it's a right click, Settings, Save Defaults. So now that we can see everything fine, let's do one more thing. Let's pull in our Denoised plate. We can just get that from the media pool, but sometimes our media pool is full of lots of stuff. So a little trick that I like to do to find something in the media pool is if I have it on the edit page ready to go, if I select it, I hit Option F, which is going to be Find in Media Pool. It loads it in my media pool, and whatever's selected here, as soon as I go to Fusion, it'll still be selected in the media pool over here, right? So if I expand this, you can see the plate that it had selected there is going to be the denoised one. So I'll just drag the denoised clip over here. And so I have both available as plates. In Fusion, it's also a good idea to rename clips when they look the same, especially denoised plates. So F2 will rename. I'll hit F2, and I'll just call it media and 2. That's fine. I like to leave the original name the same, and then just underscore DN lets me know that's the denoised plate. And I don't need to do the main plate. I can understand what that is. Click the media tab to make that go away. And if you want to load two side by side, a lot of compositing is comparing. We're now loaded in our A buffer, and then if we want to go to our B buffer, again, it's going to be the the comma, period, and slash keys on the keyboard. Nothing is in that B buffer now. We can put our denoise plate in there. And if you want to go up here to buffer split wipe, this lets you see both sides. So if I zoom in close, we should be able to see a difference between the denoised and the original plate. You know what would make this easier to see is if you turn on the edit for display LUT and just gain up quite a bit, then we should really be able to see the two. Oh, you know what I did? I loaded the media in 2 on both of them. That's why they were looking the same. I was confused. So media in 1 is on the A side and the denoise is on the left side. Now you can really see the difference between the grainy version and the cleaned up version. And this will be great because we can use a tool from Milo Labs to regrain this patch once we clean it up in Affinity. In case another compositor comes in, they might want to know what frame you froze. So the way you can freeze stuff right here in Resolve, Shift space, time speed is one of the tools that can do that really well. Load time speed over there. Turn the speed down to 0 in the inspector. And the delay is going to be the frame number that you want to see. So I want to see 30. I want to freeze frame 30. So delay is going to be set to 30. And just like that, this is frame 30. So that'll be our reference frame that we're going to be cleaning up in Affinity Photo. I'm going to rename it with F2 time speed underscore FR30. Just so we have that reference available. And then with this loaded over here, you can right click and export this. Now, we have a view LUT turned on for both of these. Just because we have that gained up does not affect the image underneath. I want to make that sure that that's clear. So I could have left that up, you could turn it off, but that's really just for checking things. To export an EXR single image from Fusion, you just right click on it and you say save image, and then you give it a name. So we'll just call this one backpack and denoise, something like that is fine. V1, you know, it's a good idea to version stuff. So this is our denoise plate that will get cleaned up, and let's place it in our Resolve Fusion Fridays folder, backpack Affinity, and we'll call this one Affinity. You know, whatever your organization is, fine. But you want to put the extension on it, .exr. Return. Now we get the fun of opening up Affinity Photo. And then right click to say open with, not Photoshop, we don't want you, we want Affinity Photo, Affinity Photo 2. And we're opening it up. And look at that, it actually looks pretty normal. And the reason why is I actually already have my OCIO view LUT loaded into Affinity. So where do you get that from? Well, it's the exact same file we used in Resolve. Remember, in Resolve, we got from this GitHub page here, that 2.2 view LUT. That's what Affinity is using. And the place you load it in here on a Mac, it's under the Affinity tab. On a Windows machine, it's under the Edit tab. But basically, you want to go to your Settings, and then the Color tab of Settings. Down here to Open Color IO Configuration File, and you point it to that exact location. So you say Select, you go to, mine was already loaded, but you just choose the file, the OCIO file, say Open, and then on a Mac, you do also need to give it permission. It's some sandboxing deal to have permission to that folder, so you just give it permission to the folder that it's in. And this is a key thing here. Do not have these boxes checked is what I've found. Uncheck perform OCIO conversions based on file name, and then obviously you don't need the warning for it. So make sure you uncheck that. That's a key thing. Hit close, and it's going to ask you, when you change your OCI folder, it's going to ask you to restart. Oh, and a quick way to monitor if you're actually using the OCIO view transform in Affinity Photo 2 is go up to the window menu up here, and then down to 32-bit preview. And down in the lower right, you'll see that you're using the OCIO view transform with whatever version of ACES. And then the right box here, this little pop-up here, is going to say, what display are you using? Is your monitor calibrated to sRGB, like most of us probably is? Just choose that, and that way you can make sure you're not using the ICC transform that's built into the computer's operating system. Instead, you're using the OCIO config file. Real quick Affinity Photo tutorial. I'm going to hit Command-Shift-S to save this as an Affinity Photo file. It's kind of like a PSD, just so I can have a layered element to come back to later. And I'm going to remove this this white alpha channel over there. I'm going to use Z to sort of zoom in, spacebar to move around here. And to remove this, I'm going to work on a new layer. So new layer button down there. And over here we have a lot of the same tools you're used to from Photoshop. Even J is the shortcut to get to these. I'm going to use the patch tool. The thing that gets most people is one, up at the top, current layer is not what I want because I'm working on a new transparent layer. I want to change this to current layer and below so we can work on the layer below. And then also make sure you have the layer selected over here, because if you don't, when you draw, nothing's going to happen. I'm going to zoom out just a little bit, and you just kind of draw with your cursor around the arrow. It's kind of like a lasso tool that you want to be removing. So if I just sort of draw around there, and then you can take your, as soon as you move your cursor, it's trying to choose a place to use to fill and blend it in. And it's trying to do like frequency separation. So if I click once and click it again, it tries to smooth it all out. And it did a pretty good job from the start. So if I turn it on and off, but I can still kind of see those edges there. So you just do a little bit of cleanup on top of that. So on this one, I would say healing brush is a good option. And healing brush will just let me choose. It's like a clone, sort of. You option click an area, and then you can sort of paste just color information and sort of leave texture. So, you know, again, this is not a huge tutorial on Affinity Photo, but I just want to show you can quickly use still photo techniques to paint something out. And the other thing that's nice about this, I'm going to hit Command 1 to go full screen and turn that back on, is now I've isolated my paintwork to just this area right here, just so that I'm only replacing this part of my composite back onto the graphic over there, which is going to keep the most original bits of the shot intact, right? So I'm going to go to File, Export, and once we choose Export, make sure to choose EXR, so we're going to keep this a completely non-destructive round trip. And when you choose that, you want to go down here and choose a couple other things. For compression, I've been using zip out of these on my still plates. I know it's a bigger file than the DWAB, but this is just one still clean plate that I'm making. And as far as the pixels, I'm going to do 16-bit half float, which makes it a little bit smaller. But the key thing here, there's another checkbox you need to make sure you uncheck, and that is color profile from name. Uncheck that so it's not doing anything crazy to the color, and it does a completely perfect round trip. So that was two places you need to make sure you uncheck the color profile from name. The other one was in the settings when you initially turned on your OCIO. We'll hit export, and where we're going to put it, let's put it right next to the others. So Fusion Friday, Affinity Photo, Affinity, and we'll just keep it right here. And then the name of this one will be patch V1, I don't know, something like that. So we have the patch, click and drag, and it loads a new media in, and you can see we have a little patch here. And we just need this to match. Now, the first thing you'll look at is we got these jaggies. Anytime you see jaggies, is what I like to call them, that means the alpha channel has not been multiplied yet. It's an unpre-multiplied alpha channel. You can see this maybe better if I change this here to checker underlay. You can see it's really hard jaggies on there. So what I need to do is actually pre-multiply this. So the way you do that, there's a node in Fusion called shift space multiply. There's a lot of ways to do it, but this just multiplies the alpha channel. So now we have a nice gradient. So this will blend nicely into the original plate. Then change this back here to checker underlay off, so it's black again. If you just kind of want to see how well this actually looks and just see that it's non-destructive, I guess we can do that first by merging our patch on top of our frozen clean plate. And then pick and flick our merge over there. You can see we seem to have done a pretty nice job, right? So before could be A, and then period for after could be the merge, and then the one next to it slash on the keyboard is our little wipe. You can see we've gotten rid of it, but it's not moving yet. So the next piece of the puzzle is going to be doing tracking. So to track the movement in this shot, we're going to use the planar tracker, just the default planar tracker, and we'll use the match move setting on it. So shift space, type in PLANA, P track is what it's called, and that will automatically connect to whatever you know, whatever comes after. So if you're still new to nodes and stuff, that's not a problem. If it, wherever you click, let's say it wasn't pre-selected, wherever you click is a way to say, hey, I want that node to live there. So I'm going to hit shift space, and I'll just show that again. It drops it right where I clicked. And if you want to insert this in here, instead of having to do this wiring and all that, if you just hold down shift and bring it down to the bottom anywhere along here till it turns blue and yellow, it inserts it, and it'll always go into the background input with the planar tracker so that you can start drawing on it and make a reference frame and get tracking data. So planar tracker is really simple to use. It's hard to master, but what you want to do is just drag a polygon around the thing you want to be tracking. And it should be basically the same surface. So basically what I'm doing is just coming around here. Now, generally, you don't want to be going outside the area that you want to be tracking. So, but in this case, this is a very simple one. I wouldn't worry about it too much. I added an extra point there. I'm gonna hit Command Z. Just make sure it's closed up as the main point. And to get it working, what you'll do is park it at a reference frame. I like to park it at, keep everything at the same reference frame that we worked from. So this was, remember we did frame 30 down here. So I'm gonna move to frame 30. Oh, those were off. I didn't do that the right frame. Select them all by just dragging and then hold Option. Lets you move all of that together, and so you can sort of recenter it on the image. Once we have that set, we're going to change our reference frame to being set to the frame we're on, and that picks up that frame 30 there. I'm going to change the tracker type to hybrid point area. Motion type is how, you know, how much motion is in it. I always try with perspective first, and if it's bad, then I change it. So we'll start with perspective, track forward button, and then we come back to where we tracked from, which is frame 30. If you didn't want to drag there, there's actually a shortcut. You can just hit the go button and then track back from here. And what it's doing, it's giving us tracking data that's all relative to this reference frame. That's why reference frames are so important here in Fusion and anytime you're doing tracking. I can't really tell how successful this track is. This will lie to you a lot. So the way you can actually check the quality of the track is, was it any good? Is go to operation mode, steady. And as soon as you go to there, what it's done is it's kind of locking off this whole area. And I position my cursor over a point. Let's say we put it right on the center there, and then I push play. And if that point doesn't move as I'm playing back, which it looks like it is pretty rock solid, that means the track is good. If at this point you do this, and this is this middle part is wobbling around, meaning the part that if I change this back to track, meaning that the points in this section inside this polygon are moving, you got to retrack, and you need to probably lower your motion type because your results are not going to be good. But this works for this case right here. Not a big deal, pretty easy. But how do we use this data? One of the best ways of using the match move data when we have a clean plate already made is to use what's called the create planar transform function right here. What this does, essentially, if I click it, it'll make a node. Poops out on the node over there. And the node is giving me information about our reference time. And what that means is that reference time at frame 30, this is why reference frames are so important. At frame 30, it takes the entire image, like top, you know, left, bottom, left, as if it were not moving at all. And all the frames around it are going to apply movement to it. So it's basically what's the reference frame, and then you feed your image through the planar transform. I hope that makes sense. So what I want to be doing here is I do not care about my patch going into a freeze frame anymore. We're going to actually move this over. So we have our patch from Affinity Photo, and I'm going to merge this on top of the original footage here that has grain and noise and all that. And you'll see how this works. So if I go to frame 30, it doesn't really matter to park it before, but it's just kind of cool to see when it happens. Then we'll add a merge node after here, shift space, and then merge. Shift space is your tool picker. And then what we need to do is feed our clean plate that's been multiplied, pre-multiplied, going into the planar transform. And then we haven't done anything yet. We need to merge this on top of the original footage. And now when you push play to preview it, this patch is getting match moved based off of that frame 30. Oh, and one more quick thing to pay attention to is because this patch is moving and it's a frozen frame, it needs motion blur. So anything that moves things in Fusion has a motion blur checkbox. If I click the planar transform over here, go to the settings tab, and we have a checkbox for motion blur, turn that on. I like to crank that up to 10. And it's a very subtle thing, but what will happen is any sort of detail pixels in here will get motion blur as the image is moving. And so that's going to sell your patch a lot better. We're almost done. We're getting close. But if you come in here closer, and then let's turn on our exposure so we can see better. But let's turn that up quite a bit. So anytime you use still image software to clean something up, you're going to need to add noise back. You can take a look here. As I increase the exposure, this sticks out like a sore thumb. We need to apply the grain. So yes, you can just regrain with the tools that are right here in Fusion, but this regrain tool that I'm going to show you is available on Fusion Reactor. That's this website that I'll point to right here. I'll leave the link down below. It tells you how to install it. Totally free, really great stuff in there. And once you get it installed, you'll go down to Console, Scripts, Reactor, Loader Reactor. The tool I want to show you, if I hit Shift Space, is called Regrain by Milo Labs. The way this thing will work is I'm going to feed it the original footage, which is this media in one right here. And right-click on a node, it kind of gives you specifics of where you're dropping it. This is going to go into the background. That's where the original footage goes. And then it also wants the denoised plate. So this is another use why we created the denoised plate, as well as we're going to take this in here as well. I'm going to hold Control just so I can target specifically where I want this to go. I want this to go into the denoised input. Okay. And then the next thing you need to do is move and pick a reference frame for the noise print to try to calculate everything. So with a regrain loaded up in the window here, because I've got stuff in there, what you want to do is move this little box to pick an area to sample that doesn't have a lot of texture. Now, an ideal thing would be like a sky. This image here, everything in it has texture. So it's going to be kind of a crapshoot, but right here, let's pretend that this part of the bag wasn't supposed to have too much texture. We can place it there, and then you can choose a frame to park it on. Why don't we just use frame 30, because we did that as a reference for every other frame. You go to over here, reference frame, type in 30, return. Make sure your color space is set to linear, which I think is the default since we're using ACES CG, so it's linear light. It's the way to composite. It's the way of the future. Let's get the plate mixed in there. I'm going to go to the planar transform. And the planar transform right now has just our moving patch. And that's what I actually want to be regraining. So I will be taking this, instead of it getting merged right now, I'll remove that. I'll take the output of the planar transform, and I'll be dropping that into that pink input. So let me do that again. Right click, pink input, that's the comp input, okay? The comp input here basically means our cutout patch. Load that up over here, do our split wipe one more time. The only thing to pay attention to is when I do that without a mask, I'm actually regraining everything, and I don't need to be doing that. I just want to be doing the patch. So the regrain tool itself has a mask input. So if I right click on the output of the planar transform, which moves it, I can drop this into the effect mask, and then we can load that over into the right viewer. And then to actually multiply the mask out, make the cutout from it, go to settings, multiply by mask, and now you can see what I'm doing. So now I'm just applying grain to that cutout region, right? It's not comped over yet. I'm just trying to get it there to match the grain levels. We have a regrained result. I'm going to disconnect our media out because I don't need that anymore. Move our original plates over here. We're going to merge our patch over the top of the original plate. Shift space, merge. Original plate comes down here. Move this off to the side so you can see better. And then the output of the regrain effect that I got from Reactor is going into the foreground of merge. And we have a patch that has animated noise on it so that it sort of fits into the scene. Now, to get this to the timeline, you need to always make sure you have a media out connected. So that will get us back to the timeline. So there we go. We've got a patch in there. It's following with the planar transform that we had done with the planar tracker. We've multiplied the alpha channel from our patch from Affinity Photo. We've kept it fully in ACES CG the entire time, but this was an easy example because the lighting doesn't change a lot. So if the lighting changes a lot, you might need to use 2 or 3 patches and blend them with a merge over time, or use my trick that I use to animate the lighting changes with a series of brightness contrast nodes, which you can find in the tutorial I have about the cleaning up the back of a bus, like a tourist bus. And now to render this whole comp out so it'll play back on just about any computer, we're going to first go to the edit page to rename this so we can give it a comp name version. So select the clip, go to your inspector, down to the name area. At the end over here, I'm just going to remove everything until where it says the clip number. We'll call this comp version 1. Click to lock that in. We've renamed it down there. So when you go to the deliver page, you can use your EXR preset that you had made, the DWA half, setting. We'll say add to render queue. Actually, don't hit add to render queue next. Pay attention right here. Our in and out points are selecting multiple clips. And if I just want to render this one, mark it in on the timeline, so it'll restrict it to that area. Add to render queue, render, and it automatically creates a folder on disk called comp1, and the shot sequence in there itself is getting labeled as it's cooking out. And this is one really cool thing about using sequences, is if you actually use Fusion Studio, you can distribute these so that one computer is rendering one frame, one's rendering the other one, and it's actually, if you have Resolve Studio, it means you have Fusion Studio. This is all built in for free. Like, as long as you share the same storage, you can have your own render farm for basically nothing. To color this is still an ACES CG, so you probably, a colorist might want to put this into ACES CCT or ACES CT, whatever it is, instead of ACES CG for grading. So you would change this here from ACES CG to ACES CCT. And now we're back into log world with a clip that has been cleaned up. So the classic ACES sandwich that you probably see taught all over YouTube right now, Option S, is to go from here to work in this little area between here, between ACES CCT, and on the second one we'll go from ACES CCT, which is the ACES log format, out to good old Rec 709, where I passed it. And so you see we get nice smooth playback. We've got noise and grain added in there, and you have all this flexibility of floating point right in between. We've done a perfect round trip, not adjusting anything else other than cleaning up and removing that logo. So if I choose this X marks the spot, I've got it set to loop. It's gone, just like that. That's the full enchilada. I hope you learned something new today. My name is actually Chadwick, and if you're new here, this is your first time, I'm so glad that you enjoyed this tutorial and stuck around this long. I have a website called Creative Video Tips. I would love for you to connect with me on there so I get an email and then I can reply to you personally. And because there's so much more to learn, I'll see you in the next video.